My name is Lindsay Jane, and welcome to the Solarpunk Scene. Today, I am going to be doing the second part of Gilded Shadows. In part one, what ended up happening was our protagonist, Morgan, who is a student, ended up nearly being attacked by who appeared to be a crazy dude and met somebody named Jack. So we'll see where it goes from there. Alright, now getting started into it. Alright, Chapter 2, Captured Queen. Morning came way too soon. I didn't have to be up early, but my brain was trained to wake up at a specific hour. Even without my alarm, my eyes popped open an hour after daylight. I was just lucky I didn't have to actually get up and go to class. I rolled over for the 20th time, mashing my face into the pillow in the hope I could suffocate myself back to sleep, or maybe just into a coma. I wasn't picky. Ugh. I lifted my head and glared at the display panel on my bedside table. I'd stayed up far too late reading about Earth's fairy mythology. It'd been a pretty fascinating read, really. But I flopped back onto my back, throwing an arm across my eyes to block out the daylight. I was definitely doubting the decision to stay up until who knows when. 4 o'clock hadn't been the best reading time, but it had gotten my mind off the evening events prior to that, and that had kind of been the point. Still, probably hadn't been a good idea when I was going to wake up at 7. I finally gave up and rolled out of bed with another groan. I just have to catch a nap later on. Might as well just throw my entire sleep schedule out while I'm at it. I yawned as I stumbled to the kitchen for a glass of water, because I still didn't have anything else in the house. Last night had too many distractions. I'd been too freaked out to place an order for groceries, which meant the kitchen was still empty. And a quick check confirmed all the morning slots were already taken. That meant shopping in person, even though I didn't really want to. I turned on the news as I leaned against the counter and yawned into my glass of water. A woman's face fuzzed into view, hovering over the image from last night. The image was of the broken fountain basin, mostly drained of water. Several officers stood around it, talking to one another and members of the crowd. The anchor began to discuss the young woman nearly assaulted in front of the stunned onlookers, and heat crept into my face as they showed footage of the man leaping at a blurred out and censored figure I knew to be myself. Just the image of myself I wanted to wake up to. At least they edited out my body. Even so, I set the glass down and pulled up a visual of any messages received while I slept, and sure enough, there were 2 from the safety department. One was a response to my port, or rather a notification to let me know I sent it, as if I hadn't been present when I, sent it. The other was a notification identifying me as a witness and requesting me to come at my earliest convenience to answer some questions in person. There was no convenient time for this, but I should probably get it over with as soon as I could. Looks like that'll be how I spend my afternoon. Hopefully, they won't need to ask too much. There was footage of everything that happened. What more could I add? Beside the whole part where I was pretty sure I destroyed public property with my mind, on accident, because I wasn't going to be bringing that up anytime soon. I closed the interface and frowned at the news report, catching the tail end. Weirdly, they didn't discuss the fact that the man in the fountain being an Esper. An unregistered Esper normally would have been a bigger deal. Maybe it was for the best, though. It's not as if his behavior was due to being an Esper, but that would have been the inevitable slant, even though he'd clearly been on something. Usually, they'd have taken every chance to sensationalize the danger of unregistered Espers. As it was, they were pinning it all on drug use and suggesting it was evidence of another small crime ring in the city related to Crimson. Then again, they like to pin nearly everything on Crimson. If you believe the news networks, every crime in Delphine had its roots in Crimson, and the organization had its claws pretty deep in New Albion as well. Never thought I'd be grateful to Crimson for being so horrible. They took attention off other issues. Because if the media was keeping Espers out of the story, it hopefully was an indication that the safety department was thinking along similar lines. I didn't want to have to lie to anyone. I was awful at it anyway. Hopefully, one interview was all they would need. It wasn't like anything terrible had happened to me. I didn't want to make a bigger deal out of it than necessary. If they expected me to agree to press charges, they were going to be disappointed. I just wanted him to get some help. I didn't want him in trouble, though I guess that was inevitable, regardless of what I did. I bit back another yawn. If I didn't hurry and get the shopping done, I'd run out of time. There was still an opportunity for a late brunch if I could beat the crowds this morning. This time I'll just stick close to home, though. There was a grocer at the end of the block, and they had a hydroponic garden so you can pick your own produce, which was fantastic. After that, I suppose I'd have to go give my statement in person. I leaned on the counter, rubbing a finger against my lower lip. I needed to carefully plan what I was going to tell them, though I didn't think sounding too rehearsed was wise. I didn't want to reveal that I was probably the one that broke the fountain. I'd managed to keep that little fact swept under the rug for so long. Far too long to be outed now. Though it wouldn't exactly have been the first time I'd caused something like that was for sure. I placed the glass in the sink and went to get dressed. It was just that there weren't many people who knew I was an Esper. Trent was the only one I'd ever told. Even Mum didn't know. And as far as I knew, no one else in my family had ever exhibited anything other than the planetary standard of 1-2 on the EA scale. EA scale. What is the EA scale? I assume it's not Electronic Arts Gaming. The AA scale, literally ESP ability scale, is a 15-point system used to determine the strength of one's psionic abilities. Scoring on the EA scale is applied similarly to fairy espers, but they can be difficult to rank, as their abilities don't always align with the standard ranking systems. Scores of 1 to 2.9 are considered the planetary standard. Everyone on the surface of Arculus and Siri possess at least this much psi ability. It does not allow for active use of telekinesis of any kind, but it does give people a sort of mild clairvoyance and abnormal mental focus that allows them to utilize the nanosystem effectively. Alright, and they have a whole big long explanation of that, but we're going to go back now. My brothers and parents are normal. Grandparents, cousins, none of them ranked high enough to be considered a true Esper. As for myself, I didn't know what my exact score might be. I certainly had the ability. I'd even tested positive in one of the many assessments we'd had back in primary. But when they did the genetic test and scans, I didn't have any physiological indicators. A reassessment of my practical ability didn't show any psi traits, so I'd been labeled as a false positive. Hey! Hello, Charles! Alright, but I wasn't. There'd always been little incidents throughout the years. Nothing major, nothing I couldn't hide from most people anyway. I hadn't planned to tell Trent either. He only found out because we'd lived together for a while. It was hard to hide it from someone interested in studying espers. But he had kept the secret. If anyone could understand why I might want to, he could. He even doubted that I ranked much over 3 or 4 on the EA scale. Nothing I'd ever managed to do indicated I could be stronger than that. As a child, even that would have been enough to get Endgame's attention, but I didn't want to be recruited for this ability, by them or anyone else. What's Endgame? Endgame is also referred to as the Planetary Defense Organization. They are a quasi-military force made of espers, and their goal is to help keep the peace across Arculus, Siri, Dione, and even New Terra. Alright. I just never wanted that. Endgame's work was important. They were the Planetary Defense Organization. They helped keep the peace across Archelaus, Siri, Dione. I heard they even made it to the new Terra station, and those guys rarely wanted anything to do with us surface dwellers. Okay, I could have just kept reading, but okay. In its own way, it was incredible and fascinating. That just wasn't the path I'd chosen. I wanted to go where I wanted to go, not where I was told to go. I wanted to research, to learn about the history of this world, not to be some kind of psychic soldier. But more than anything, I think my fear would have always been that I'd be chained down by this ability, that it wouldn't be me anymore. I'd be an Esper. I didn't want to be defined by that. But there would probably be no choice if people knew about me. Espers made up such a small portion of the population, far less than even 1%. Even the weaker ones were highly valued. Plenty of organizations wanted low or mid-level infantry that managed to avoid being recruited to endgame. And ranked Espers? In very high demand if you somehow managed to use your connections to dodge endgame. But all those jobs were the same. Security, contract, and business negotiations, law enforcement. If I'd been discovered as a child, that's all that would have awaited me. So I kept it secret, thinking that I could just hide it until I was out of school. I'd be fine. Adults had way more leverage than children when it came to that sort of thing. And so far, it'd never been a problem. So far. I paused just outside the door to my building and took a long, slow breath to clear my head. I would just have to hide it, as I always had. Besides, I had never tested positive again after that one time. With the situation at hand, they had no reason to jump to any specific conclusions about me. It would be fine. I would be fine. Telling myself that, I decided to get on with my day and not dwell on it. There was a man talking or arguing with the building security when I stepped outside. I might have completely ignored them as I stepped around them, but there was a secondary man nearby, his hair fading from silver at the roots to pink at the ends. I nodded politely as I passed, my thoughts turning towards shopping and the things I was going to purchase. But I didn't get very much further down the footpath. Hold on! Wait! Miss! Wait! My heart started thumping against my ribs at the sound of an unfamiliar man just behind me. Ah! Oh no! Oh no, how do I go back? Can I go back? Oh no! What happened? Oh, okay. I guess he ran up to her. Okay, yes? Winter, you're scaring her. Wait, what? The pink-haired man looked startled at the very thought, that maybe it wasn't a great idea to run after a woman while shouting at her. The dark-haired man quickly joined them, flicking his worried gaze back at me. He shoved his hands in his pockets and offered an uncertain smile. I apologize if my partner startled you, but you're Morgan Leone, correct? It wasn't a question. I narrowed my eyes as I returned his frank gaze. He was fairly well dressed and tidy. The pink-haired man beside him was dressed more casually, making the two of them an unusual pair. But nothing about their attire gave any clues to who they might be. Your partner? I'm Ruben Kellner, a special investigator with UTPOL, United Triad Police Organization. This international investigative body has jurisdiction throughout the Triad and with some of their allies. They work across multiple nations and city-states, sharing access and data on crime and criminals. There is a General Assembly that meets twice a year to make decisions regarding the organization, and each participation dome has a central bureau that coordinates with other domes. Okay. Alright. So they're cops. Okay. This is my partner, Winter Ashton. You can check your interface to verify our identities. I bit my lip and did just that. And sure enough, like all public employees, their identification was openly available. That would also explain how they knew who I was. Their positions would have allowed them access to my information as well. Special investigators, huh? Dang it. I didn't mean to run after you like that, but your doorman wouldn't let us in. Reuben here had been arguing it with him for 10 minutes already. When I saw you come out, I just followed without thinking. Building security is fairly tight, so... You're a student living alone as well. I'm sure they're extra cautious when people come looking for you. I don't know about that. There's just a process unexpected visitors have to go through, that's all. This unexpected meeting had me on edge again. Why would they come looking for me if I was supposed to go in for an interview anyway? I must have looked as nervous as I felt because Winter gave me a sheepish grin as he took a step away, tipping his head in the direction of the fountain incident had taken place. Reuben, I think I'll head down to the crime scene and have a look around, if you don't mind. It's not that far from here. You can handle this on your own, right? I'll be fine. We'll catch up later. See you. It was nice to meet you, Miss Leone. He started away from us with a slow jog. Reuben watched him until he was gone before he turned back to me. Sorry about that, Miss Leone. We have a lot of ground to cover today. Though the abruptness with which Winter left made it fairly apparent it was more for my benefit than anything. It's all right. But I hope you realize I already received a request to give a statement about the incident last night. I didn't realize somebody would be stopping by. This morning, they turned the incident over to our department, and I'm not sure they'd have informed you before our scheduled interview. I wanted to talk to you personally, so we decided to stop by while we were in the area. Unless you're too busy at the moment. Alright, so there's 3 options, and the options are, I'm not that busy, I'm really sorry, but I actually am busy right now, or I'll come by this afternoon as planned. You know what? Let's just get this interview with this guy over and done with. That probably seems like the best thing to do. So I'm not that busy. I'm not that really. I just haven't eaten today. I've been busy with exams and my kitchen is empty. I was planning to do some errands, that's all. But if you need a statement now, I can postpone shopping. Why don't we talk over brunch instead? I just wanted to get your perspective on the attacker and exactly what happened. Aren't you on duty, Detective Kellner? You can call me Reuben, please. And I am allowed to eat during the workday, I hope you realize. I just can't let you treat me. That's what we call a bribe. First, I wasn't going to offer to treat you. Second, I don't have a reason to bribe you, unless you're accusing me of a crime. But I'll have you know I was the one assaulted. Reuben laughed and shuffled closer, perhaps taking the teasing as a sign I dropped my guard a little. No, you're not under suspicion of anything. It's just that recordings can only show so much, so sometimes it's good to hear from the victim. But if you're not comfortable with brunch, we can meet up at the office later. No, you're already here. It would be pointless to meet up later instead of taking care of this now. I know a nice cafe nearby. Alright. Sure. Beautiful. Okay, that's a pretty good cafe name. Reuben was surprisingly amiable for a detective. I mean, I hadn't exactly met many. My youngest brother had joined the safety department 2 years ago, but I hadn't met many of his colleagues. The way he talked about the special investigators always made it seem like they'd been aloof and serious. Those were for local branches, though. I would imagine someone with how would one even pronounce an acronym? UTPOL. UTPOL. Someone with UTPOL. Someone with UTPOL to be even more aloof, though. Reuben wasn't like that at all. Didn't mean I was nervous talking to him, but it helped that we were chatting at an open-air cafe and not a station somewhere. He was polite and professional, and also had a strange way of setting me at ease as we spoke. I've had instances where I've had to give my testimony as a witness, and I ended up having a detective come to my door, and I can tell you straight up, it would be far more pleasant to go and sit in an open-air cafe than having them come to your door. He was polite and professional, but we also had a strange way of setting me at ease as we spoke. So you had never seen the man before? I hadn't. I mean, in fairness, I haven't done much but study lately, and go to and from the university. Even if he had been lurking around or anything, I doubt I'd have noticed. And he doesn't seem the type to hang out with your average university student anyway. No, he doesn't. I couldn't believe they still hadn't caught him. It seemed like he'd gone to ground after the incident, and they weren't sure how to find him, even though he stood out as dramatically as he did. I'm sure having him go after you like that was frightening. Yeah, haha. You can tell by how much I was screaming. Reuben's brows lowered as he leaned across the table, pushing his half-eaten food out of the way. You weren't hurt, were you? I didn't see any records of you being checked into any clinics, so I assumed you were fine. I wasn't hurt, no. Just a little unnerved, that's all. I'm glad. We're keeping a lid on this, but you know the guy was an Esper, right? I suspected it. I mean, that trick with the water, and the way the fountain broke like that. We're assuming that it was an accidental use of telekinesis, probably sparked by him getting worked up the way that he did. From the way everything played out, we assume his telekinesis is abnormal. But it's hard to say. To tell the truth, the way he fled shows he has had some Rook-like abilities. Alright, what does Rook-like abilities mean? Rook-ranked Espers usually score somewhere between an 8 and to a 12 on the EA scale. They possess biokinetic abilities that allow for physical enhancements beyond normal capability, such as enhanced senses, strength, dexterity, or even processing and intelligence. Rooks also possess enhanced regeneration, telekinesis, and sometimes mild clairvoyance. Their telekinetic skills are usually on the weaker side, as most of their abilities rely on physical enhancement. But it would be strange for an Esper ranked that high to go unnoticed for so long. In the past, the only unregistered Espers that would turn up in New Albion totally unaffiliated were pretty low level. To be honest, when I pulled up your file, I thought you might be one as well. My heart rate skyrocketed instantly as soon as he said that. Of course, we quickly dismissed that when we looked through your records. Your testing has been normal since you were a child, but we initially thought that might have been why he targeted you specifically. I don't think that's what it was. I agree. So that man was a ranked Esper. Well, possibly. It's rare for one to go unnoticed for so long. Usually, if Endgame doesn't home in on someone early, someone else swoops in and shelters them. Keeps them away from prying eyes until they're older. Shelters them. I lowered my eyes to the tabletop thoughtfully. Endgame can't recruit you if you're an adult, even if you're a ranked Esper. I thought the law was... I wouldn't say they can't do it at all, but the policies are open-ended when it comes to adults, so it's significantly more challenging. I don't think it would look great for them if a bunch of late bloomers caused a public outcry over being press-ganged into their little organization. That doesn't mean they don't find ways around it. You said, in the past earlier? Well, you've probably heard of F-class Espers, right? Though, I guess you'd be more likely to have them to have heard them called fairies. I know of them. Anyway, there's still a lot we don't know about them, but I suppose they're common knowledge by now. They work by a whole different set of rules. Endgame doesn't seem to be able to detect them the way they can with N-class. And more of these Espers-related incidents resulted from these fairies causing issues. Not just lower-level ones, either. We've had cases with espers on par with named nanoranks like rooks or knights. What can the knights do? Knight-ranked espers usually score somewhere between 8 to 12 on the EA scale. Their abilities are usually oriented around teleportation of varying types, psi shields of varying strengths, very strong clairvoyance, and telekinesis. Alright. And I've got a feeling it's only going to get worse from here. He suddenly seemed aware of the dark tone the conversation had taken. Ah, I didn't mean that to sound so dire. I mean that espers among the general populace are probably going to become more commonplace. It's not like espers are a problem. Espers are normal citizens like everyone else and deserve the same protections. He rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. You seem pretty well versed in espers. Well, most of the crime special investigations looks at are esper related. Even before Fairy showed up, there were plenty of infantry levels that were unregistered. Oh, excuse me. We're working for your average organization or company. I didn't realize the situation with fairies was actually such a huge concern. We try to keep it out of the news when we can. There's no reason for people to get worked up over it. I suppose that makes sense. I was glad it looked like he wasn't questioning my status at all. Though it felt a little unfair the other guy was getting all the blame for destroying public property. Sorry I went off on a tangent like that. I was supposed to be listening to your side of what happened. It's alright. I know the guy was saying some pretty off-the-wall things. I guess there's not much chance you could make sense of it. Not really, but at one point he quoted a play. I'm not sure there's really any relevance to that either, though. A play? That's unusual. I assume you know which play if you recognize the quote. It's called A Midsummer's Night's Dream. Huh. Never heard of it. I have to admit I don't watch many plays. Well, it's pretty old. From Earth, actually. His eyebrows shot up almost comically at that. Earth? Really? Huh. Doubt that's required reading for a drug addict. Well, he probably didn't start out as one of those. That's true. I guess that sounded pretty jaded. I hope I didn't seem accusatory. I'm sure you see a lot of your line of work, so it's easy to become jaded. It is, but I try to stay unbiased. I'll pretend I didn't hear it. I'll make sure to leave it off the records, too. I watched him as he looked down at the display in his hand, typing into it with a frown. It was strange seeing someone use a handheld device for something like that. Though I could understand it, sometimes I prefer to take notes by hand as well. It helped me remember them better. Because I was actively engaging with the content, I suppose. Perhaps it was the same for him. He took his job seriously. Not that I had expected anything else, of course. Still. Reuben looked thoughtful for a moment. A Midsummer's Night's Dream, huh? I'll have to look it up. And what about the guy we saw you with after the fact? Who was he? We haven't been able to identify him either. But you identified me right away? Reuben shrugged. Your records were easy to find. The attacker, not so much. The guy that helped you, also a no. He told me his name was Jack Visker. I'd never met him before, though. Anything you know about him? Well, not really. I hesitated slightly, unsure if I should mention this. But then again, it's not like Jack did anything wrong. He'd helped me. He had a Delphine accent. Other than that, I can't say I know anything about him. She didn't confirm that he had a Delphine accent. Like, there was specifically the choice of whether or not you could go and ask him about it, and we went with the choice of that she wasn't going to ask about it. So now she's just presented an assumption to a police officer. Great. 10 out of 10. Delphine? If he was visiting illegitimately, that could explain why we couldn't identify him. Sorry, I didn't ask about his status. Don't worry about it. In the end, you were just dragged into something that had nothing to do with you. None of it's your fault. He stood and slipped his jacket back on before he held out his hand. I did the same as I took it. His hands were warm as he gave mine a very gentle squeeze. Thank you for your time, Morgan. I appreciate it, and I apologize for taking up so much of your time. No, it's fine. I just wish I could have been more help. I want you to know that, at this time, we have no reason to believe that this is anything other than a random attack. The man was an Esper, but he also seemed to be exhibiting signs of substance abuse. I don't think you have any reason to be worried about him coming after you again, or anything like that. But I'll inform you when he's in custody. I'm sure it'll help you sleep better. What makes you think I won't be able to sleep? I didn't want to say anything, but those are some pretty dark circles under your eyes. Ugh, I hadn't even paid attention to that before I left the house. Reuben laughed as I put a hand to my face. Well, maybe it's just from staying up too late studying. I hear sleep deprivation is a chronic issue for higher tier students here in New Albion. I'll say. I hesitated, lowering my eyes briefly. That man. When you find him, what will happen to him? Worried about him? Well, like you said, he seemed to be in need of medical treatment, that's all. That'll obviously be on the top of the list. We need to find out exactly what's wrong with him to get him treated, of course. But he's going to have to answer for his crimes. He assaulted a member of the public, damaged property. He smiled gently at my expression. But no one was seriously injured, so I'm sure that punishment won't be too severe. I'm glad to hear that. He released my hand and stepped away from our table. I'll be in touch. You take care of yourself, Morgan. I will. Thank you, Reuben. I wish I could have been more help. No need to apologize at all. I'm sure we'll talk again. He shot me another smile and wave before he'd left. What a nice man. I was glad that I ended up talking to him instead of trying to convince him to let me wait. In spite of the topic, it hadn't really been that bad. When he was gone, I sat heavily back in my seat, thinking over the conversation. Fairies, huh? What was more curious was that they hadn't found the identity of my rescuer. I assumed they did a face recognition search to find me. Even though I'd sent in the report, the fact that I had 2 messages from them suggested they may have identified me separately as well. It seemed like a face recognition search hadn't worked on Jack. That might mean he really was here without a passport. Hello! Welcome! It wasn't really my job to find that out, but I couldn't help but wonder. Still, I had other things to do, and this was something I wanted to put behind me. After that, my morning was fairly productive. I'd gone to this grocer to get enough food to last a few days, so I wouldn't have to leave my flat for a while. Most of that was set to be delivered later in the day. I only had a small bag of tangerines and other produce with me. And as I was leaving, a little chime popped up. I had a message. And when I checked it, I found a short note from Reuben. Morgan, thank you again for your time this morning. I appreciate you sitting down to chat with me. I've updated our system, and there's no longer any need for you to stop by to give a full statement. You can clear your schedule and hopefully spend the rest of the day relaxing. It sounds as if you need it. Reuben. I smiled slightly. That was nice of him. I was glad I wasn't going to have to go in for another statement. Some relaxation was definitely on the menu. For the time being, I was thinking of heading home and having that bath that I never got the chance to have last night. Then, maybe, a nap. I was so focused on getting back that I wasn't paying much attention to my surroundings after that. Looking back, that was definitely my first mistake. Uh-oh. I just exited a pedestrian-only area and was passing a sleek blue car parked near the footpath when it happened. Out of the corner of my eye, there was a strange flash, and for a split second, everything went silent. I quickly turned, but there was nothing there. Sound flooded back into the world, and everything was normal. I stood still for a long moment, just looking around as if that would help me work out what had happened. Something's wrong. It was as if there had been a glitch in reality, but no one else had seemed to notice it. What the heck was that? I didn't get a chance to finish the thought. From behind me, someone grabbed me by the shoulders, causing me to drop everything in my hands. And without warning, I was being pushed towards the blue car I had passed only seconds earlier. What? No! Help! I twisted wildly to see who was there, but they kept me facing forward as they shoved me along. No! I was not allowing this. I planted both feet firmly on the footpath, pushing back against them as I let out a painful shriek. The surrounding people continued to walk past without even looking our way. What? How can they just ignore this? Alright, so we have two choices right now. There's fight against your attacker, or flee your attacker and find help. I feel like whoever is attacking her right now has gone and done something so that people can't actually see what's going on, hence nobody going and reacting. So I feel like probably the best bet to go for is probably fighting against your attacker. That didn't matter right now. I just knew one thing. I wasn't getting in that car. I twisted, screamed, and tried to stomp the foot of the guy behind me. We had stopped just in front of the car. My attacker grabbed the back of my head, pushing it downward towards the open door. I freed one hand enough to brace it against the top edge of the car. At the same time, I jerked my head back as hard as I could. There was a startled grunt behind me and a flash of pain as my head connected with the guy's chin. I didn't have the leverage or space to elbow him in the side, so I clawed at his arm instead, grabbing and twisting to try to get him to let go. All to no avail. With a low growl, the man caught my hand and pinned it behind my back. He pushed me flat against the side of the car, pinning me in place. His head dipped down as he hissed in a low voice. Get in the car. We don't have time for this. Caleb, there's no need to be so forceful with her. We don't have time for this, Ari, and I'm forcing her because I was told to force her if she didn't come willingly. Told by who? We don't have time to explain right now. Get in the car. Caleb and Ari? I didn't recognize either name, and the fact that we were addressing each other so casually indicated they had absolutely no concern about me learning their identities either. Let go of me! I was desperately trying to catch someone's eye as people passed us. Why was everyone acting like this was normal? Caleb moved back just enough to have room to place a hand at the back of my head to force me down and into the car. My shins smacked against the edge of the door and I fell face first into the seat, only to be moved out of the way seconds later. I barely heard the muttered apology as he got in behind me and slammed the door shut. Go! I was pressed back into the seat as Ari slammed his foot into the accelerator. Now alone with the two of them, I let out a shaky breath. Now tell me what's going on. What do you two want with me? Neither answered. As expected, we were being tailed. Tailed? By who? Why? Caleb shot me an exasperated look, but ignored my questions as he leaned over the front seat. How many? Ari checked a console next to him, frowning. At least 3 others are closing in on our location. 3 other what? Now that I'd calmed down, I realized I should call for help. It was amazing how adrenaline could completely erode one's ability to think logically. Keeping one eye on the 2 of them, I tried to connect with the safety department through the net. Wait, what? I couldn't connect. That was impossible. Ari made a wild turn, sending me headlong into the door. I only just managed to avoid slamming my head into the window. There was a flash of worry across Caleb's face as he pulled me back away from the door. Time for the contingency plan. Van said she has an area cleared near here. Get us there. I am trying to do so. I glanced behind us, realizing there was another car that appeared to be following us, just like they said. How did I get myself in the middle of some high-speed car chase? This was insane! Change of plans. Get us out of here now, Ari. You realize if I just teleport us out, they'll see the distortion trail. Teleport? Espers. Then we have to get them off our tail first. I don't believe that's going to be possible. Then we need a way to mask the trail so they can't track us. Ari made another sharp turn, this time sending me face first into Caleb. He wrapped an arm around me as he braced himself against the front seat so he wouldn't slide around as much. I struggled against him, but his grip was too tight to get away. Well? Hold on. I have an idea. Let go of me! I gave Caleb a shove, but it was like shoving a wall. He didn't even look my way. Instead, still holding me tightly, he moved us both aside as Ari apparently set the car to auto and climbed into the back seat with us. The car abruptly slammed into high gear. I could hear the high-pitched whine of the power coil as we sped up. Crushed into Caleb's chest as I was, I only caught a glimpse of what was outside the windscreen. We were on a long street with an intersection ahead, and across a building we were heading towards at full speed. What are you... Hold on. Wait, they were about to drive into that building at full speed? My head filled with the sound of the power coil trying to overload. I clapped both hands to my ears and screamed. There was a flash of light, and then everything stretched and twisted. I couldn't see anything or hear anything. I felt like my body was being ripped apart. My scream thinned into nothing. Oh, that's pretty. And then we were tumbling onto the stone floor we'd been spit out of thin air. I staggered forward, free from Caleb, but running wasn't an option. My entire field of vision was spinning. I pressed the back of my hand to my mouth, trying to swallow down the taste of bile and will my stomach to untie itself. That felt like a space fold, or a wormhole or something. There was no technology I knew of to create any sort of micro wormhole. Caleb and Ari seemed unfazed by what had just happened, as if they'd done it 1,000 times before. They were speaking, but their words were like an uncomfortable buzz in my head. Yeah, I really love the stained glass in this. It's so pretty. They've done such a great job with creating this, like, Victorian, beautiful greenhouse feel. I couldn't make out what they were saying. My stomach finally gave out, and I gagged onto the floor, clutching my abdomen as it tied itself in painful knots. Everything tilted, and I hit the ground, barely managing to catch myself. I was still choking on the taste of acid and whatever was left in my stomach. That finally got attention. There were footsteps, and someone was crouching next to me. His hand passed gently over my back, a surprisingly gentle gesture from a damn kidnapper. It's all right. Try to take deep breaths. Instinct told me to scramble away, but my body wasn't exactly in prime scrambling condition. I stayed in place, squinting at the ground and wishing he'd go away. The first jump can be a little disorientating. It'll pass soon. Disorientating was an understatement. I just ignored him and tried to figure out what to do next. I just need to get a hold of myself. How had all this happened? And more importantly, what did these two men want with me? I was hardly a prime kidnapping target. I leaned over to rest my forehead against the cold ground, trying to take slow, deep breaths. The soft trickle of water echoed to me from somewhere in the building, but it was otherwise quiet. Ah! Water. Just give me a second. Ow. My water bottle isn't here. Dang it. Where were we? How far had we traveled during that jump, as he called it? Rubble littered the floor. Chunks of mortar, bits of twisted metal, pebbles, dust, and broken glass. There was also a strange smell, like wet soil and rot. From what I can see, it looked like a damaged vivarium or hydroponic center. There were some broken containers scattered around and a few stray piles of dark soil, like the sort my father used to work at. Tendrils of vines sneaked through the wreckage, as well as some tenacious plants that had taken over the place were. Some tenacious plants that had taken over after the place was damaged. None of it was useful for escaping, but it gave me an idea where we could be. There was a sector of Sicilis hit by a terrorist group last year. It had been a shock to everyone to have an attack so deep into New Albion. Repairs had stalled due to some kind of bureaucratic nonsense. Much of this was still damaged, and the entire sector was off limits. Aside from a few security guards and municipal officers at the entrances, it was also supposed to be empty. I wasn't an expert on espers, but I knew from Trent that most knights could only teleport short distances. Line of sight, maybe a few kilometers if they'd been to the location before. The damaged sector was around 12 kilometers from where I lived, so that held up. I tried to catch my breath and quell the nausea. Okay, good. That was good. If that's where we were, then getting back home wouldn't be a possibility. If I could get away. That was the problematic part, though. I shifted slightly, turning my head just enough to get a look at Ari and Caleb. Ari was still right next to me, but Caleb was 2 or 3 meters away. If Ari was an Esper, surely Caleb was as well. Espers, and also criminals. I had no reason to assume this was tied with what happened yesterday, and yet it seemed like too big a coincidence for it not to be connected. But even knowing that, it wasn't like it told me what they wanted with me. No one else is around. I'll contact the tower and have Morai try to get a read on this place. But before that, care to explain why you brought us here? No one else knows who we're with. If they do manage to track us this far, they still won't be able to determine who managed to succeed in acquiring her. I chewed my lip and kept one eye on them as I carefully pushed myself up. My legs were cramping, and yet something hard was jabbing into my knee. Even if I couldn't run yet, I didn't have to stay all huddled up. For now, I doubled over as the nausea returned with a righteous vengeance. So, moving was a bad plan. I gripped my abdomen hard enough. I was surprised I didn't push my stomach out through my spine. Crimson knows who we are. Crimson? He's the only one. So you're hoping that no one knows which faction took her, they'll just fight amongst themselves for a while? That's a long shot. I tried to listen as I fought off the nausea, but none of it made sense. They were talking about factions and Crimson. All things that had nothing to do with me. I was a student. I can't stay here. If Crimson doesn't find out where we went, someone else will. We aren't the only one with bishops. Let's go. Yay, new Esper rank. Let's see what the bishops are. Bishop ranked Espers usually score somewhere between an 8 to a 12 on the EA scale. They possess a wide range of mental-based abilities known as theakinetics. In addition to powerful and precisely honed telekinetics. Their telekinetic abilities usually far exceed other Espers. In addition to this, they typically have precognitive abilities, clairvoyance, and other similar type abilities. So far we have Rooks, Knights, and Bishop rank Espers as the different type of psychic abilities. He joined me and Ari, stopping a half a meter or so away. How is she? Finally checking in on her. Very polite. Not well. Morgan Leone, can you stand? She was just like throwing up. And like, okay. I managed to glare at him through my hair, gritting out an answer. Do I look like I can stand? I believe that means no. I apologize for the discomfort. As I mentioned, the first jump is often rough for people. I wouldn't have subjected you to it if it hadn't been necessary. Okay, enough. We don't have time for you to play the night. We need to move, even if it means one of us has to carry her. Caleb. I winced as the buzzing in my head came back. Get her to her feet. Come on. I know how she feels, but we can't wait for her to recover. My apologies, Morgan. Ari, clearly the more polite of the two, tried to pull me to my feet. I did not cooperate, only partly due to being ill. But mostly because I didn't want to go anywhere. The further we got from my home, the less likely I'd be able to get back. Why are you doing this? My parents can't pay a ransom. Neither one bothered to answer my question. I swallowed hard, wishing I at least had something to wash my mouth out with. As if in answer to my thoughts, a small flask appeared in the edge of my vision. I stared at it apprehensively. Drink quickly. We need to leave. Alright, we now have two options. Take the flask and drink, or slap it out of his hand. So, he seems nice. I'm not sure if we should necessarily take things from him. He seems friendly. I might regret this later, but I think we're going to go ahead with and drinking it. What could go wrong? Yeah, nothing could go wrong from this. Take the flask and drink. I reached for the flask hesitantly. Did I really want to accept a drink from these two idiots? Not really, but logically speaking, it was probably just water. Probably. They clearly didn't need to poison me or drug me to make me go with them. I unscrewed the cap and took a sip, wondering why he was carrying a flask of water around anyway. Just in case any girls he happened to kidnap vomited their guts up? I mean, maybe. I turned away from him as I took a sip and swished it around my mouth, making a face at the taste. I immediately spit it back out off to the one side, noticing a touch too late that Caleb had moved close enough to be in the splash zone. Oops. I felt, not that I felt bad about splashing vomit water on his shoes. Well, not too bad anyway. He hissed his annoyance, not quite getting out of the way in time. I think she's well enough to handle a second jump. I mean, Caleb, Ari, we don't have time to wait. If she can act like that, she can handle it. I ripped myself out of his arms and took a wobbly step away. No, I was not doing that again. If not because I had no intention of being kidnapped, but because I wasn't going to endure my insides turning in themselves upside down again. I mean, fair. What do you people even want with me? Ari stepped to my side again and set a hand on my shoulder. Morgan. No! You're going to take me away from here. What do you even want with me? Morgan, we're here to help you. I know this must be difficult. By kidnapping me and nearly killing me? He looked almost sad, and that just made me angrier. This wasn't a situation where the villains got to be sympathetic. We'll explain everything later. Let's go. It's already later! He took me by the wrist, and this time I couldn't get away from him. Caleb. Get ready to make another jump, Ari. We don't have time. Ari moved closer, and I just lost it. There was no time to worry about how I felt or who they were. I was already far from home, and going for another jump was out of the question. No! I clawed at Caleb's hand, trying to pry it off my wrist. Calm down! He tried to pin my free hand with his as I dug my nails into his fingers to pry them off. I somehow managed to drag my wrist from his grasp, only to have the other immediately captured. It was at that moment I attacked full force, screaming, kicking, and clawing at anything I could reach. Damn it, Ari! He pinned my wrists, but I kicked out savagely, catching him awkwardly in the thigh. Caleb is really taking a beating here from her. Let go! Ari slipped his hand under my arms and started to drag me out of leg reach, while Caleb cursed loudly. Apparently neither of them had been expecting the outburst. I hadn't really been planning it either, but I might as well just go with it now. I twisted violently, trying to wrench myself from Ari. I was still watching Caleb out of the corner of my eye. He was definitely trying to work out how to get close enough without getting another kick, but he suddenly whipped his head to the left, his eyes going wide. "Ari, watch out!" I didn't get the chance to see what caught his attention before the pillar beside us exploded. Ooh, and we're on to chapter 3. Fantastic. Alright, chapter 3. Iron and steel will bend and bow. Oh. I screamed and ducked down when the pillar exploded. Ari grabbed me and dragged me back, spinning both of us around the edge of one of the other pillars. I stood there, heart hammering back to stone, face staring at Ari's Adam's apple as he shielded me from a valley of what sounded like weapons fire? Sort of? I didn't actually hear a weapon, just the sound of the building being damaged around us. Even sonic weapons made noise. I couldn't understand what was happening. Caleb, who had dived behind some nearby rubble, pulled out a small handgun and fired back at our attacker. I clapped my hands to my ears, sending up a panicked prayer as everything spiraled completely out of control. The ground less than half a meter from me exploded, shooting a spray of stone flexor towards my face. At the same time, the entire building shook as if hit from the outside. Instinct kicked in, and my body moved on its own. I had no idea where I was intending to run. I was just going to run. Away was as far as my brain got. Ari stepped in front of me, placing one arm across my shoulders to pin me in place while he fended off any debris that would have struck me. Oh, that's nice of him. I mean, considering he kidnapped her. The building shook again, and another shower of debris fell on us from above. Was someone firing from outside? But why? Ari did his best to shield me, but I wasn't interested in being protected by him. He was a damn kidnapper. He didn't get to act chivalrous now. I tried to shove him away, but he kept my arms pinned. Let go! Stay down. I like how they keep having their eyes glow with different things. Very, very neat. A loud explosion rumbled through the floor, and several more shots struck the ground just beyond the pillar. Caleb fired back, though it didn't seem to do much good. Is it just me, or is that a cyburst? It is not just you. Who even is that? What's... Ari calmly placed a hand over my mouth. Will you shut up? They didn't exactly introduce themselves before they started flinging those things at us. He stopped berating me only long enough to fire several shots at the attacker. I shoved Ari's hand off my face. Why are you shouting at me like that's my fault? And there are two of them now. One has a sonic rifle. There appear to be more of them outside. Not sure if they're from the same faction. Yeah, I noticed that when they started trying to bring the whole damn place down on our heads. The moment they got over the wall out there, we're done. You notice my voice is getting dry? Yeah. Alright, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to disappear behind my green curtain and go and grab some water. Give me 1 second. Wow. It's almost like reading for like an hour straight without drinking water can have negative effects on you. Alright, here we go. Ari appeared around the pillar. Those two are shooting at each other for the moment. Perhaps we should take the opportunity to flee. Flee? Where? You teleport, and we might as well send up a beacon saying who we are and where we're going. What was the point of even coming here if we do that? For a moment, it was so surreal, as if I was watching it all from the outside. Caleb and Ari are just having a conversation while Caleb exchanged weapons fire with two people. one of who was apparently an Esper shooting some sort of psi attack at us. I just couldn't get my head around it. How the hell did they find us anyway? Oh. An adept team of bishops, no doubt. Are you ever going to tell me what's happening? I let out another short scream as something hit the pillar Ari and I were behind, sending a terrifyingly powerful vibration through my body. Never mind, not talking anymore. Ari, get her the hell out of here. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt this. We have a little guest. She's emerged from behind my curtain to come and say hello. This is Xiaofan. She is a full-grown 4.5-pound kitten, and she says hello. Yeah, hi. Hello, sweetie. I'm a little busy right now. Thank you. Alright. I think it would be unwise to leave you alone. You cannot... Get the queen out of here, Vaughn. That's an order. Okay. She is a queen. Good to know. Queen? No way. I hope you realize you do not outrank me. Damn it, Ari. Just do it. Oop, his eyes glowed. Caleb suddenly darted out from his hiding place to another pillar to get a better vantage point from which to murder people, I assumed. He fired off more shots, leaving me wondering why he was using a weapon and not whatever psi abilities he possessed. Ari sighed, and I had the strangest feeling this sort of situation had played out with them many times. It was just every day for them. I need to get you to a safer location where we're distracted with each other, but I don't wish to attract attention, so we're going to run. Wait, what? He took my hand, and with a quick look around the pillar, he dragged me from where we were to another pillar a short distance away. I ducked my head down and bit my lip to keep from screaming the entire way. Running around in a place where people were shooting at each other wasn't something I wanted to do again. From behind our new hiding spot, Ari scanned the area as if deciding on a path. I had a sinking feeling we were definitely doing that again. There is a corridor on the adjacent wall. If we can make it there, we should be safe. Why not just teleport like you did before? My teleportation ability leaves a distinctive distortion trail that can be tracked. Teleporting across the room will draw attention and fire. I had so many more questions, but no time to ask them. A shot from one of the others slammed into the pillar we had just left, taking a huge chunk off. If we'd still been hiding there, we definitely would have been hurt. Ari checked quickly, then looked back my way. We're going. I nodded hesitantly, not really wanting to, but I didn't think I would get a choice. He grabbed my arm, and together we darted from that pillar to a pile of rubble. Ari ducked behind it and pulled me to the ground with him. Ooh, she's cool. But as I went down, I caught a look at one of the people Caleb was fighting. A woman in black with some kind of breathing mask on her face. She slinked back out of the fractured rainbow light from above into the shadows. Right as she winked out of sight, she looked our way. And maybe I just imagined it, but it felt like our eyes met. A shiver crawled down my spine. And then she was gone. Ari had seen her vanish as well. He crouched behind the debris, a frown passing over his face. A night. This isn't good. A night. Which means she could teleport like him. We weren't really safe anywhere in this room. Not when Caleb wasn't next to us prepared to shoot anyone who teleported to our location. Morgan, hold on to me. What? I didn't actually have time to do it. Rather, Ari grabbed me, and once again the world twisted and warped. When I staggered out of whatever you call that sensation, we were right in front of the opening Ari mentioned before. It opened into the yawning darkness. He shoved me in, tucking me against the wall just beyond the doorway. I thought you said we weren't doing that again. The situation changed. Stay quiet. His body was tense, as if he was watching to see if we'd be followed. But from where he was standing, the room we'd left wasn't even visible from where we stood. Thankfully, the knight appears to be preoccupied with Caleb and the other one for now. It doesn't appear that anyone is heading this way, though I can't be certain that they aren't aware of which direction we went. The building shuddered again, sending a shower of... dang it. Gotta stop doing that. They got showered with dirt, I guess. Ari planted his arms on either side of me, and their air buzzed slightly with what I could only assume was psi energy. He managed to block most of the debris. Seconds later, Ari pulled me further from the light and into the darkened corridor, but he glanced behind me worriedly. I don't believe Caleb will hold out long alone. I bit back the sarcastic response to that, because, as angry as I was, I really didn't want Caleb to get hurt, or anyone. I hoped no one got hurt. It was a stupid, childish hope that had absolutely no place here, though. We don't know how many are outside either. A knight that can use bursts that strong is unusual. He seemed to be talking to himself more than me, but I hazarded a look up at him. What's a cyburst? A psychic attack. You cannot be hit by one, Morgan. Besides the physical damage, they can severely disrupt the neural pathways of people who don't know how to block them. Does Caleb know how to block them? Caleb is a rook. His ability to physically enhance his body gives him a measure of resistance to this type of attack. A measure of. That didn't sound very promising. Ari stopped walking and set his hands on my shoulders, leaning down to look earnestly into my eyes. Morgan, you must hide. What? She and the others are targeting you. We'd hoped to retrieve you before the other factions found you or moved in, but we underestimated them. I really want to know what faction these guys are with. I'm really curious. What does that even mean? Listen to me. I am unsure of who's outside at the moment, but someone is interfering with our connection to the net. I've been trying to call for backup, but I cannot connect. For now, I need to retrieve Caleb. In the worst case, I will get the three of us to safety. It's better for them to know who we are than for you to fall into their hands. Find a safe place to hide until we come for you. He turned away, but I grabbed his sleeve. You're wrong. All of you. You're wrong about me. You are the one who is wrong. Then tell me who you are. Are you... We'll explain everything soon. You have my word. Be safe, Morgan. And with that, the space in front of me distorted slightly, and he vanished. I sagged against the wall, unsure if I should be relieved or terrified now that I was alone. From the sound of it, fighting was intensifying on all sides. I didn't know what to do. Whether it was because we didn't go far or because I hadn't already done it, the effects of the second jump hadn't been as bad as the first. I felt shaky, but that was more from being shot at than teleporting again. But I was glad for a few seconds to stop and collect my thoughts. Where do I go now? I wanted to run, but where would I go? There was fighting outside, and I somehow didn't think it was because anyone out there was trying to rescue me. Ari had mentioned factions. I didn't know what factions had closed in on us, but that didn't exactly sound friendly. I moved forward, slowly, anxiously. Even if I could get out of the building before someone came after me, what then? What if the people out there were worse than Caleb and Ari? Ari said to hide, so I would. That didn't mean I would go along with them. I just needed to hide somewhere they wouldn't find me either. And then, when they'd given up, maybe I could think of a way to get home. Broken glass crunched under my feet as I walked, but the sound of fighting faded a bit as I went deeper into the building. I wasn't sure where I was going. My father had worked in places like this, though. If the fighting was more on that side, then I wanted to hide myself somewhere as far from there as I could. So I just keep walking for now, keeping an ear out for any signs of being followed. In the meantime, my mind was swirling with questions and uncomfortable theories. Caleb had mentioned a queen, or rather, he clearly called me that. A queen, huh? That they somehow thought I was a queen-ranked Esper might explain their actions. Somewhat. Espers were rare, less than 2% of the population, and of those, even fewer hit the upper ranks of the EA scale. I'm sorry, but every single time it says EA scale, I just, think of EA games and think of, The Sims. Queens and kings were the two rarest ability types. Less than 1% of Espers held those ranks, far less. But I never once demonstrated telekinesis on the level of something like a queen rank. Based on the skills I'd exhibited, I'd always assumed I was on the lowest rungs. To have them thinking I was a queen, what would cause them to assume that? The fountain thing? It couldn't have been that. Neither Caleb nor Ari had even been around for that. Unless... Jack? Were they working with him? There shouldn't have been a way to know I caused the fountain thing. But if they'd already been watching me at that point, then they had some other reason to suspect I was an Esper. But that couldn't be it. A broken fountain was not queen-level telekinesis. There's no way Jack or anyone else would have seen that and immediately thought I was a queen. But that brought me back to the previous point. They should have had no reason to be watching me in the first place. Besides, Jack had a Delphine accent while Caleb and Ari did not. That could mean nothing. But at a very surface level, it could show they had nothing to do with each other. Ugh, I didn't know. How could I come up with any solid answers based on the limited information I had? I couldn't. So for now, getting away from this madness was my priority. With knights who could pop in and out of shadows or wormholes, or who even knows what other abilities, I wouldn't feel safe until I'd hidden somewhere none of them would find me. Even then, maybe not. They literally kidnapped me off the street in broad daylight and no one noticed. What could you do to fight against something like that? And Ari had mentioned some kind of interference with the net. I hadn't even tried to call for help since we arrived. Too much happened all at once. But sure enough, when I went to pull up my interface and connect to the safety department, there was nothing. One of the factions out there had enough clout to put up some kind of widespread interference with the nanosystem. That was insane. It wasn't like just anyone could do that. Endgame, Crimson, groups of that caliber, sure. Or the government. Ugh. I was in so deep over my head, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to claw my way back out. There was a lump of panic growing in my throat, but I tried to swallow it down. I could not go to pieces. I absolutely could not. Just focus on one thing at a time. Trying to think about everything at once would get me nowhere. I locked my eyes on the uncluttered ground, and I just tried to pick a careful path through the dark hall as I took slow, deep breaths. Except for the debris, the place was gutted. Offices and other rooms were empty, doors hanging open on broken hinges. The walls were scorched, and some doors twisted and burning, an ugly reminder of the escalation that led to last year's attack. And now it was under attack again, for a different reason. A soft scuffle of movement in a room to my left caught my attention. I froze, eyes wide as I tried to stare into the darkness there. I immediately thought of that lady in black slinking through the shadows the way she did. Alright, we are faced with a choice again. I am going to take a quick amount of water. Alright, so here are our two options. We have run back the way you came, or ask who's there. So, considering the fact of that, with running back the way that she came, We know that there's fighting there and that she's unsafe. However, we have no idea who it was inside the building. So, I personally think that it would probably be best to go and ask who's there, because we know that running back is dangerous. But I don't know. Let's ask who's there. Who's there? I regretted speaking as soon as the words were out of my mouth. My voice was hardly more than a croaking whisper, but it sounded so loud in that quiet corridor. And what did I expect? A name? An introduction? Kindly directions on the way out? So stupid. For someone so confident I'd aced that exam from yesterday, I really was an idiot. There was no answer, not right away. But a dark shape shuffled out of that room. Definitely a person, though I couldn't see them clearly at first. I took a wary step backward, trying to decide if I should try to run past them, or run back the way I'd come. It was a bit late to find somewhere to hide. I heard a raspy whisper that made my stomach drop. How? The whispers crawled in me, like snakes that stole my soul. I can hear him strangling all of the light with his eyes. His eyes are everywhere, in me, and they want to be in you. Oh, wow. Okay. How? How can you be here? I'm everywhere now. All inside everything, except in you. My voice can't reach that far yet, but it will, once it's gone, when it dissolves. One voice, just one, dissolving in the sea of eyes. Oh, hello, friends. You looking good? Looking good? You had your hair done? Okay. The figure stepped into a patch of light that filtered in from somewhere. My breath caught in my throat. That person in front of me was exactly who I thought it was. Oh, the guy from the fountains had a little bit of a makeover. The man from the fountain, the Esper. It was him, but he was different. Changed. Ghostly skin, and a strange gold light shining from his eyes. I didn't understand what I was seeing. I wish I had a wooden stake. He definitely looks like a vampire. What could possibly change someone like that? Drugs didn't do that to you. Nothing should be able to do that to you. I know you. Yes, we met before. They know you. They found you because of me, or they found me because of you. He found us all the same, and now we're going to fall into the eyes and disappear. You could have saved me. Why didn't you save me? He rushed at me, mouth twisted open, eyes wide and gleaming in the faint light. But even as he caught and pinned me to the wall, I was certain I saw tears wetting his face. I wanted you to save me, to take me to the stars. And now I'm gone. There's nothing left. What could have happened to this man? Reason with him, or fight to get away. You know what? I know that I can see the comment to go and say hit him with a chair. I can understand definitely the desire to do that. Unfortunately, we do not seem to have a chair to have the option, but I'm really curious what is going to happen if we try to reason with him. So, because I'm sure it'll be fine. So, reason with him. What happened to you? They found me. They found me and swallowed me. You said I could save you. He stopped for a moment, as if confused. I'm hoping we can get some answers this way. Maybe. I'm sure things will be fine. It's fine. It's fine. Then abruptly let me go, stumbling backward away from me. Yeah, there we go. There, I'm here now. I can help you now. He clutched at his head with a low moan, rocking it side to side. It's too late. It's too late now. His voice won't stop. It's never too late. I said it, but I wasn't sure. He looked up at me with agony-filled eyes, and my heart broke at that sight. I reached a hand out towards him. Let me help you. I can... No! He screamed and lunged at me. Oh, okay, oops. I tried to dodge, but he was too fast. He caught me around the throat, slamming me against the wall. A choked cry escaped, but was cut off as he squeezed my neck. I clawed at his hands, kicking my feet as he lifted me up off the ground. Oh God. Please. You can't help me. You can't. His voice. The eyes inside my head, everywhere. They want you. They'll devour you. Like they're devouring me. They're eating up my brain until I'm gone, until there's nothing left. You're not gone. You're right here. I reached out with a trembling hand, fingertips brushing his cheek. There was a strange jolt when I touched him, tingling that started my fingertips and spread up my arm. The man looked at me with confusion, terror. What's your name? His eyes went wide and his hand slacked. He released me and I hit the floor, legs too weak and shaking to hold me up. I coughed violently as I gulped in air. The man staggered away from me, choking at a low, shuddering moan. One hand to my throat, trying to swallow, I got to my feet. I didn't know what to do. Leave him or... Yay! His eyes aren't glowing anymore. I assume this is probably a good thing. His name's Rory. Hi, Rory. What? My name is Rory. I'm Morgan. His eyes darted around as if he wasn't sure where he was. He stared down at his hands, then at me. There was something in his face, a clarity that hadn't been there before. Morgan, you should leave. Get out of here. There are others lurking. If you stay, they'll catch you. Come with me. We can go. No, I'll hold them off. He gave me a gut-wrenching smile. It's the least I can do. I'm sorry. No, I don't want that. You really did save me this time. Thank you. There was a shuffling in the shadows, not just one set of footsteps, several. Hurry. Go! But you... Go! I stumbled backwards. In a final parting look, I fled back the way I'd come. I hadn't actually gone very far into the corridor, not as far as I thought I had anyway. I reached the opening that led to the main atrium in what seemed like almost no time at all. The silence out there was unnerving. I hadn't realized it as I ran, but as I paused near the door with one hand resting on the wall to catch my breath, the sounds of fighting had stopped. What was I even doing back here? I was supposed to be getting away. But with that man back there, it felt like I was hemmed in by enemies. Unsure if I was being pursued or what I should do, I peered carefully into the atrium. My eyes went wide. There were bodies. Not just one or two. I could only assume the people from outside had gotten inside at some point. They were strewn about, and I don't know if they were unconscious or dead. And one of them was familiar. Caleb. He was alive, moving and struggling to sit up. That woman in black was just in front of him, her foot connected with his jaw, sending him across the floor. I let out an involuntary cry, and her head whipped around to me as I clapped my hands to my mouth. Too late. She definitely spotted me. She held out a hand, and I knew what was coming. The air in front of me warped as I saw something released from her palm. And Ari was there, looking like he was barely standing as he held his arms up to block with one of his shields what I could only assume was a psi burst. Why did you return? Someone attacked me. He looked back and reached out with one hand, then crumpled to the ground, and the woman was right behind him. I backed away, heart drumming against my ribs like it was ready to jump out of my chest. No! She simply kicked Ari's unconscious form to the side like he was nothing as she came towards me. I didn't want this. I didn't want any of it. I wanted to go home. I wanted my normal life. The woman reached for me. I covered my head, ducking lower as if I could shield myself from her. Don't touch me! I screamed the word, and from somewhere deep inside, that scream just built and ripped its way out of me with enough force it felt as though I was ripping my throat open. It was my own voice echoed inside my head over and over. There was a rumble and shattering glass. Steel bent, broke, rubble falling. Everything was falling. Then reality twisted. Cold air hit me, and I was running. Chapter 4, the board is set. And before we get into Chapter 4, I have another guest star who has come to see us. We have a Mr. Bubs. This is Mr. Bubs. His formal name is Falcor, but he is also known as Mr. Bubs. Hello, Mr. Bubs. Do you have anything you want to say to the nice people? Anything you want to say? No? Okay. Thank you for coming by. Have a nice day. So the other cat that I had before, Schaffen, who's teeny tiny, she's 4.5 pounds, and Falcor's 15 pounds, and they came from the same litter. They're brother and sister. He is just a big boy. We call him the big boy. Alright. Oh! Bubs, I don't know if you can get on my lap, buddy. I don't know if you can get on my lap. We have to read Chapter 4. Do you want to help me read Chapter 4? Okay. Alright, bud. There we go. Alright, Chapter 4, the board is set. It was dark. My net connection was still scrambled from whatever they had done to it earlier, so I had no way of knowing where I was, what time it was, or anything. I did know there was a rain event planned for this area, given it had started raining on me at some point. That was about how far my knowledge extended. It was cold and miserable, but I'd been running in a distorted haze before the first drops of water hit me. The shower helped wash away some of that, but only some of it. There was still a fog draped over my mind, and just wouldn't leave. And so I ran, and ran. My feet splashed through countless puddles. I went through dozens of unfamiliar streets, alleys. Somewhere along the way, I realized my shoes were gone. My toes were freezing, and the stinging pain shot up into my calves each time my heels slammed into the ground. It wasn't until much later that it occurred to me to wonder why I was barefoot, though. Even then, I could only assume I must have lost them when I got out of that building from before. I spent what felt like hours alternating between running down deserted streets and cowering in doorways to catch my breath as I shivered in the rain. At first, I thought I was in the same sector as before. It was abandoned, but there was no blast damage, and I just couldn't say for sure. I could have teleported myself a kilometer away from the previous place, or 100 kilometers. I had no way to know. And that had already been hours ago. I hadn't seen anyone else in that entire time, though I'd been on the move for most of it. There must have been people squatting in the empty building. In fact, it would have been surprising if there weren't, but I didn't see or hear anyone else. No human anyway. I apologize, Falcor is trying to headbutt the microphone. Buddy, I love you, but I'm trying to do something. No, buddy. I know. I'm sorry, bud. Come on. There we go. No one human, anyway. At some point, through the haze, I felt something beyond the frantic need to go home. A deep, frightening certainty I was being followed. It wasn't the sort of paranoia you could ignore, but a feeling so powerful and raw that it took hold of me and wouldn't let go. It spurred me to run faster, keep pushing myself until I thought I'd collapse. I'd been crouching behind a garbage receptacle, resting when I first caught sight of it. I only saw it for a second before it vanished again, which told me it definitely had a stealth function of some kind. I had crouched there for what seemed like forever, too paralyzed with fear to chance moving. But eventually, the pressing need to get home sent me running again with every sense I had on full alert in case it was still nearby. It wasn't long before I had to stop for another break and ducked into a tight corner to hide in the shadows and take a breather. My head hurt so much, throbbing in time to each rapid heartbeat. Each breath felt like broken glass scraping its way through my throat. My ribs, my feet, my everything. It all hurt. Exhaustion rushed over me, causing my head to droop nearly to my knees. Can't sleep. All I wanted to do was curl up somewhere, but I couldn't afford to sleep in the open. I didn't know if the thing was after me was programmed to restrain me or just take me out. It was small, too small to be a proper retrieval unit, but the goal might be to incapacitate me until someone could arrive to pick me up. And there was no reason to think it was the only thing tailing me, even if it was the only one I'd seen so far. The main question was, who sent it? It didn't look like something some two-bit criminal group that got wind of a new queen would have access to. Ugh. The whole queen-ranked Esper thing. I hadn't wanted to believe it. I hadn't believed it at first. But how else could I explain getting out of that building? Initially, I thought maybe Ari had done it, that he'd somehow teleported me to safety as the building crumbled. But I was the only one who got out. If it had been him, I wasn't sure why he wouldn't have followed me. And queen ranks could mimic the psi-ways of others and reproduce their abilities. I couldn't reject the possibility that I'd mimicked his skill in a panic. There were implications to that I didn't want to think about, like the fact that if it were true, then even if I made it home, they wouldn't stop pursuing me. Unless I got protection from another group with the strength to keep everyone else away. Endgame. I let out a soft groan. Thinking that far ahead was pointless. I just needed to worry about getting back to a populated area where I could get help. With eyes burning and ears ringing, I forced myself to my feet. If I stayed in one place, that thing would just find me, so I had to keep moving. Even if I couldn't see it with its stealth program activated, I could feel when it was near, like warning lights in my brain telling me that there was a threat close by. It was too strong to be a gut instinct, and if I could accept the queen rank theory, then it was my best to assume I should listen to that theory and that feeling. I glanced up at the dark sky, wondering when the rain would end. Been off and on for quite some time. If that machine was tracking me by heat signals, then the cooler the environment, the more I'd stand out. I need to stick close to the walls. So I'd avoid the open for a while and try to stay in the alleyways, and hope that was the right decision. When I get home, I'm going to take the hottest shower, and bury myself in my blankets. I'm never going to leave my apartment again, until I get my test results. That's right, the exam. I had to get back home for that. I didn't have time to worry about espers. There are people who are like killing each other over like trying to get a hold of this lady, and she's being like, clearly the top priority here is my exam results. Okay. My mind went back to when I told Ari they were wrong about me. I wonder what happened to them. And that woman, buried alive somewhere? That possibility made my stomach do uncomfortable flip-flops. I didn't like that thought. I paused, a hand resting against the cold wall. They probably got out, right? The little warning light in my brain went off and that deep feeling of panic and fear hit me again. Alright, so we have two options. Flee the area to a safer place, or try to find a place to take shelter. So this thing has gotten close enough that it knows that she's there now, so probably best to just keep moving to a safer place. Blood rushed to my head as I pressed myself against the wall, look around wildly for a place to hide. That thing was close by again. I could feel it. If I could just somehow replicate that teleport I'd done before, if I could get out of here. I was so tired. I wanted to stop running, but if I stayed where I was, it would be fine. I had a general sense of where it was somehow, and I knew it was coming closer. I would have made a break for it, and if it heard me and gave chase, I didn't know. I'd have to deal with it then. Clamping my mouth shut to quiet the ragged breaths, and doing my best to quiet my steps, I turned and fled silently back the way I came. I don't know how I drummed up the energy to run, but I wouldn't be able to keep it up much longer. Tears squeezed from my eyes, both in frustration and pain. At some point, I would collapse, and when I did, it would be over. If I could just find a place to rest, just for a few hours. But I couldn't imagine being able to break into a building without being spotted. Part of me wanted to stand my ground, to stop running, but there was no guarantee that would get me anything but captured, or worse. So with no other goal or direction in mind, I just ran. There were no sounds of pursuit, not that I could hear anyway. I tried to go in as straight a line as I could, heading away from where I'd been, and away from that thing. It didn't take long before I reached an area where the alleys broke out in the streets. I stopped, breathing hard, lungs burning. Being out in the open was unwise, but my only other option was to loop back the way that I came. I didn't feel that sense of danger, so I would have to chance it. I staggered out of the alley at the same time I heard the roar of an engine. Before I could retreat, light flooded the area as a vehicle crested the hill. I held up a hand, letting out a soft hiss as the lights temporarily blinded me. I whirled around and tried to flail my way back to the alley because there was no reason for anyone else to be in this place. My knees gave out and I went sprawling again. This time, I couldn't get up. Even as I heard the car come to a stop behind me and someone get out. This is it. It's over. There were rapid footsteps coming towards me. I tried to lift myself up on my arms that were not cooperating at all. Holy shit! You okay? Someone tried to help me back into a sitting position. I let out a strangled cry, trying to push them away. Whoa, hold on. Hey, it's me. That accent. I squinted up at the person crouching over me. Jack? Oh, hello again. What convenient timing. You look like hell. What are you doing here? Well, I can't really pretend that I'm here for any reason other than to find you. But I swear I just want to help you. My chin quivered and I tried to bite back the tears. How can I believe you? Do you know what I've been through today? I wasn't sure why it was that phrase that finally broke me, but I let out a sob, one hand on my chest to keep him at bay, and the other wiping at my eyes as the tears started flowing. Hey, come on now. He drew me closer, wrapping his arms around me, and I wanted so much to push him away in a run. But not because I couldn't trust him. I knew I couldn't. But I still clung to him and cried. Shit. I dissolved into a shaking mess, and he just patted my back and let me cry into his chest. After a few moments, he spoke again. Morgan, I'm sorry, but we have to get out of here. You're being tracked. I know that. You know where it is? I shook my head, trying to speak around the ache in my throat. I don't think it's close. He pulled away and looked down at me with a serious look on his face. But if we don't leave soon, it won't be long before it finds us, or someone else does. He stood up and offered me his hand. All right, now we have the two options. Trust Jack, even though he's kind of shady, or don't trust him. He's way too shady. I personally am leaning towards don't trust him. He's way too shady, considering the number of times that she has said directly that she doesn't trust him. So, I think I'm gonna go don't trust him. He is way too shady. I don't trust you. You're just like the others looking for me. Am I supposed to believe you ended up here by chance? No, you're not. I'm not here by chance, and I won't pretend to be. I made a pathetic attempt to scoot away from him, though I wasn't sure what that would solve. He just watched me, and made no move to stop me. You can run if you want. But do you think you should? If you stay here and stick it out on your own, you won't last much longer. That thing could show up any minute. It wasn't like he was wrong. I knew I didn't have the strength to keep going. Even though I thought my legs could manage, my head was throbbing. I was dizzy, nauseous. Come with me. I'll give you answers, I promise. I don't know how much your promises are even worth. I choked the words out, trying to bite back sobs, but I knew he was right. Jack stood and held out a hand to me. I eyed it, then struggled to my feet on my own, though I wasn't sure how long I'd be able to stand. I'll go with you, but I don't trust you. Fair enough. Want a hand, or would you like to get over on your own? I'll walk. I had intended to try anyway, but my knees nearly gave out, and Jack had to help me most of the way. He helped me into the back seat as well, and I just sank into it, a groan escaping. Everything hurt more now that I wasn't running. Ugh. I feel terrible. You'll look it too. Seems like they put you through hell. And then some. He hopped in the front and slammed the door. For one moment, that panicky sense of danger spiked, and I nearly bolted upright to figure out where that thing was. But then we were speeding away, and the feeling faded as we left the deserted sector behind. I don't know how long we drove. I've been so determined to not let my guard down, but I dozed off pretty fast. Even if I was still cold and wet, the car was warm, and Jack didn't make small talk. The hum of the power cell lulled me to sleep, broken up by dreams of gunfire and fractured rainbow light. At some point, I woke up, sort of slouched down in the seat, with Jack's coat draped over me. It took a moment to realize where I was, much less to remember how I got there. Still groggy, I sat up. The pain in my head had faded to a dull throb at the back of my skull. My eyes were weirdly sore for some reason. I rubbed at them as I squinted at the passing scenery in the windows. We'd made it to a habitable area. You awake back there? I'll take that as a sort of. Where are we? My voice was hoarse, and my words a little slurred. I felt like I had the worst hangover imaginable. Looks like we're somewhere in Airlie. I let out a soft groan. Yeah, I figured we were pretty far from home, but that was on the very edges of New Albion. Practically in Cerna at this point. I was going to stop somewhere soon, a late-night cafe or something. I struggled to get myself awake when he said that. Why? I'd like us to be able to sit and talk for a bit, face to face. And frankly, you look like you have a pretty bad case of psi fatigue. Probably would be good to get some food in you. Besides, I figure a bathroom break is in order. We have a long trip ahead of us. What's psi fatigue? From overuse of psi. You have the classic symptoms. I reckon you have a headache the size of the triad right now. Mind fog, elevated heart rate. Well, the headache is a little bit better. Sleeping will help a bit, yeah. What if the others find us? We've been driving for 2 hours, taking a slightly roundabout way back. I'm not sure we're still being tracked at this point. Hopefully not. That didn't instill a lot of confidence. I watched buildings and lights slide past, mind sort of vaguely on what my next move would be. Where would we go from here? What would I do? Maybe this would be my chance to separate myself from Jack and strike out on my own. But even if I did, what then? I sighed again, rubbing at my sore eyes. I still can't connect to the net. Yeah, could be because someone subjected you to a nano scrambler. Could be just that your psi messed it up. That can happen when your nanosystem isn't equipped to withstand a psi burst like the one you unleashed. I've never seen one of that magnitude. For an untrained esper to do that, you're lucky you didn't give yourself permanent brain damage. Psi burst. Jack seems to have spotted a good place to stop because he slowed and turned into the car park of an empty cafe. Kitty cat? Kitty cat. Kitty boy, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? You can sit on my lap, but you've got to stop interrupting, okay? Alright. You can't move the microphone either. Not unless you're saying something, okay? He came to a stop, then changed his mind and drove around the building to park in the alley behind it. Don't know what it is? No, I know. I just didn't intend to release anything like that. And how did you even know about that? You weren't in that building. I tracked you there and was outside when it collapsed. I saw the distortion trail you left behind when you teleported. That's how I managed to find you later on. Jack hadn't hidden it from me that he'd been looking for me. Kitty cat? Kitty cat. Okay. Okay, kitty cat. No. Come on, kitty boy. Nope. Sorry about that, guys. Nope. Okay. Just give me 1 second. I have a feeling that I know what's up. Just give me a moment. His food bowl is probably low and he's probably getting cranky. So just give me a moment or two and I'm going to take care of that for him. So, alright. Alright, there we go. Yeah, their food bowl is empty, so of course they very insistent on not going without food for a single moment. Alright. So, Jack hadn't hidden it from me that he'd been looking for me, but it was still unnerving to hear all that. How long have you been following me around like this? Let's head inside, Morgan. I promise I'll explain everything. He opened the door and got out, stretching the kinks out of his back. I followed suit, wincing as soon as my feet hit the ground. My knees felt less than steady, and I grabbed at the car, which wobbled uncertainly under the sudden weight. Watch out! He reached for us both. I instinctively jerked away from him, the air crackling with energy, and every light, horn, and alarm in his two-seater lit up like crazy. I clapped my hands to my ears as Jack fiddled with the controls desperately to shut it off. Stop it! I don't know how! Jack let out a growl of frustration and grabbed my shoulders, squeezing just enough to get my attention. Come on. Deep breaths. If you release this much energy, even that asshole Magnus might get a lock on this location. And if he doesn't, the bishops will. Then they will really track us down. You have to get a hold of yourself. I took several slow, wheezing breaths as I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to not do what I was doing to set the car off. It was hard to relax with the alarms shrieking at us the way they were. Not to mention that the screaming pain in my head was back. But the instruments began to die down one by one. Good job. Just keep breathing slowly and focus on my voice. Easier said than done. But I did my best until finally the noise stopped and I could open my eyes again without feeling like I would inadvertently blow something up. Ugh. You okay? Feel really dizzy. I'll bet. Let's get you inside, butterfly. He wrapped an arm around me, and this time I didn't pull away, if only because I needed the extra support to stay upright. As the automatic door slid open, when we stepped into the warm cafe, Jack gave me a half-worried and half-amused glance. So I've been wondering this for a while now, but where the hell are your shoes? No idea. I think I lost them when I teleported. I lowered my voice even though no one was around. It looked like a place where with an actual kitchen in the back. Whatever staff were on shift must have been back there. There weren't any customers. Maybe we can do something about them later. I don't have any extras on me though. It's fine. It's not like I'm expecting to have my wardrobe needs taken care of. For now, it was enough that he got me out of that place. Jack navigated us to a table. I sat and tucked my feet out of view. Jack looked around as he took the seat across from me. Cozy. I hugged his jacket close, wishing I could curl up somewhere and sleep for 10 years. What happens now? Are you going to take me home? I knew it was a long shot. He hadn't been watching me all this time just to take me home after finding me. You know if I do that, people will only come for you again. I know. I hugged his jacket closer and shrank into my seat a little. Then, what do you want from me? Well, that's obvious, isn't it? I want you to come with me. Where? Who are you with? He seemed surprised by that phrasing, as if he hadn't expected me to have already divided the people looking for me up into groups. I was going to take you to the court. The court? I lowered my voice as someone came out of the kitchen. A curious owner, perhaps. Jack waved that way and called out to him, ordering 2 coffees. I watched the older man nod and retreat. That cult? Jack's lips curved up to a smirk. They're not a cult. I have no idea how that rumor got started, but they're just a community of espers living together and keeping each other safe. Living together where? Delphine. It's really the only place for them. The court, huh? I never heard a single complimentary thing about them, and the concept of them as an innocent community of espers didn't feel right. So, you're with them? It's not completely correct to say I'm with them. It's not like it's an organization. It's just a group of people trying to keep from being noticed. He'd said he wouldn't lie to me, but I didn't know if I could believe that. If that's the case, then how did you find out about me? There's a man back at the court who's adept at sensing other espers. He became aware of you a few days ago. And he just sent you to get me out of the kindness of his heart? We knew that other people would seek you out. Endgame, Noir, the host. Noir? That mafia group in Delphine? They're pretty well known for their experiments on espers. Human experimentation is banned, including when it comes to esper genome research. Because the mafia has a great deal of respect for the law, right? horrible. I know this may come as a shock to you, but even your own government doesn't respect those kinds of bans. There are more than a few rumors about the work the Triad is doing in that regard as well. Those people looking for you do not have your best interest at heart, I guarantee that. But you and the court do. Why? Because we're the same. The court is made up of people sick of being part of this chess game between the government and everyone else. They just want to live. Freely. I studied him wordlessly. I was nowhere near adept enough with sort of psi abilities to peek inside his mind to see anything more than he wanted to reveal. Assuming that was a thing that espers could do. When we met yesterday, at the fountain, I arrived in Cecilis yesterday and spent the better part of the day tracking you down. I knew it! Why didn't you tell me any of this then? Well, I was waiting for the right chance. I mean, if I rocked up and told you you had to come with me, what would you have done? You wouldn't have gone with me. It would have just scared you off. I wanted to find the right time to reach out to you. I didn't expect two kidnappers to grab you off the street like that. Do you know who they were? I know this will be a little tough to believe, but they were from Endgame. Endgame, huh? Was that really true? You don't seem surprised to hear that. I had considered the possibility. I just don't understand why they'd kidnap me. First of all, if someone from the court will sit down and talk, why would Endgame yank me off the sidewalk and shove me in a car? They're supposed to protect people. They're basically law enforcement. More like they're just above the law entirely. When it comes to Endgame, I can promise you they're not what people think they are. And there's a lot of things that go on behind closed doors. And in dark alleys, abandoned districts, sometimes right out in the open. A queen-ranked esper is rare, and they probably weren't quite counting on as many groups to know about you. Acquiring a new queen in secret would be a pretty significant trump card. Are you saying they manhandled me, terrified me, and risked my life for a trump card? That's how things on this side work. You want to stay on top, you need trump cards to do it. But isn't that because they're always trying to keep groups like Crimson Noir at bay without stepping on the government's toes? And maybe even the court, too. Just because I haven't heard of you people doing anything horrible doesn't mean you do, or you don't. So you're fine with how they handled this? Of course not. I didn't know. My head was hurting too much to make judgment calls about this right now. I know it's a lot to take in, and you'll have to forgive me. Endgame may be heroes to people on this side of the world, but where I'm from, they're just part of the problem. When the government is corrupt, maybe it needs its toes stepped on a little. I pressed my fingertips against the bridge of my nose, squeezing my eyes shut. I didn't know what to believe about any of this. Even if Jack was telling the truth, that didn't mean going along with him was the best option. Endgame was still Endgame, and the court was still some weird group off in another country. And if I said I didn't want to go with Jack, would he even let me go? I had no idea. Look, I'm going to step away for a few minutes. Go to the restroom. Our coffee should be out soon. He stood up and shot me a faint grin as he started away. And the car requires voice activation to unlock, so don't even think about trying to steal it. I shot a scowl as he left me at the table and disappeared through a door on the other side of the restaurant. I laid my head on the table and shut my eyes. What was I supposed to do now? How was I supposed to plan my next move? My head was hurting too much to think about it clearly. I just didn't know if I could trust Jack. The whole bit about the court was both confusing and worrying. They didn't have a good reputation, no matter what he said. It's true that Cecilis may not get the entire story when it came to news out of Delphine, but I'd heard nothing good about the court. I couldn't imagine myself becoming part of that group. Besides, I thought that guy from yesterday, from earlier today was with them. And that made me worry about it even more. Jack seemed level-headed, but could I really trust that he wasn't lying to me? As far as I knew, he wasn't from the court at all. He could be with any group. It would be stupid to believe him just because he'd helped me one time. On the other hand, he said Caleb and Ari from Endgame, and I couldn't come up with a single reason to lie about that. Well, maybe to make Endgame look bad, so I wouldn't try to go to them. What they'd done seemed unconscionable, but maybe they'd had a reason. Maybe it was to protect me from people like Jack. Endgame was a group I knew and could trust. Whatever else was true about them, they helped people. Jack was surely right when he implied there was more to them than the public knew, but I struggled to believe they were secretly evil. Probably. At any rate, they had an army of espers. It wasn't like they couldn't take over if they wanted to, yet they strove hard for neutrality. I let out a frustrated groan. I didn't even know where Ari and Cable were. A slow tingle started my feet and made its way up my legs. At first, I thought it was just because I was finally warming up. But no. My heart sounded pounding, and there was a sudden, intense feeling of something approaching. I whirled around, standing up so fast I overturned my chair. Of course, there was nothing. This was similar to what had been happening in the abandoned district, but somehow different. There was no real feeling of being threatened, just of something getting closer. In my mind, I saw a flash of Ari here, in this cafe, looking down at me. And then it was over. The feeling was gone, and I was left trying to figure out what exactly that had been. I rubbed my throbbing head again. It felt like a dam had burst open inside me. I never used to be able to do this kind of thing. Ugh. Did this mean that those two would find us soon? If that was true, what should I do? Aha! We have 4 choices now. So we have find Jack and warn him, wait there and say nothing, try to slip out through the back on foot, or go out through the front to Jack's car. Oh. So, I still do not trust Jack. It sounds like he's trying to go and talk up his group with the court, and considering the fact of that she's never heard any kind of good information whatsoever about the court and the organization that he's with, it's probably not a good idea to go through for him. For go out through the front to Jack's car, Jack has already gone and said that his car is voice activated, so that would be useless, and it would basically alert Jack to the fact of that Morgan's trying to escape. There's tried to slip out through the back on foot, in which she's in an area that she's not necessarily familiar with, and it's probably not the best idea. So I'm leaning towards wait there and say nothing, because honestly, right now it sounds like the best bet that she's leaning towards is Endgame. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on this, but I'm probably going to go for wait there and say nothing. Oh. Alright, I'm gonna go with wait there and say nothing. This choice will unlock the end game character routes. Do you want to proceed? Yes. There we go. This was it. This was either trust Jack and go with him to the court, hoping he wasn't lying to me, or go with Ari and Cable, who were part of a group who, whatever else is true of them, had protected this planet and everyone on it for centuries. Sorry, Jack. Rev, I can see you saying that Endgame sounds like the Popo. They have, in this from my understanding of it with this universe, they have the safety department, which is their version of the Popo. But Endgame sounds like it's like a neutral organization that's more about. I think it's a little more complicated than just being the police, but I don't know. Considering the fact that the court keeps being called a cult, I'm not super duper excited about going with them, so I couldn't go with him. I would just wait here for Ari and Cable to catch up to us. Yes, they are the Avengers. Righting my chair, I sat down and let my head flop onto the table with a groan. I lay there long enough to drift off before Jack returned. Well, I'm glad to see you're still here. The sound of his voice dragged me back into the world of the waking. I made a grunt of acknowledgement, opening my eyes to stare sideways at the wall next to our table. A little twinge of guilt gnawed at me. You said I wouldn't be able to steal your car anyway. Oh. So, the court organization has a reputation of being a cult. So, the court is a cult. So you thought about trying it? Yes. I have to admit, I appreciate your honesty. I don't know where I would go. Anyway, I don't know how to get home from here, and I don't know what I'd do when I got there. Like you said, more people will come after me. Which just meant the life I'd known until now was gone, no matter what I chose to do. You okay? Yeah, just headache. Why don't you get you something to eat? And where the hell's the cough? His words cut off abruptly, causing me to look up. Sorry to keep you waiting. The 2 cups slid onto the table, but my eyes went wide when I saw who was the one putting them there. That hadn't taken long. And I don't believe everything this liar tells you. He was supporting a fresh cut along the side of his eye, a spiderweb of blue and green branching out evidence of an expanded nanosystem busy regenerating the cells and healing the injury. But Caleb looked rather well for someone who had a building collapsed onto his head. And Jack seemed rather unfazed by Caleb showing up. His baffling response to this development was to pick up his coffee and take a sip. I'm almost glad to see you're kicking, Jack. It's been so long since you've been a pain in the ass. I thought maybe your boss got sick of you and tossed your body in the wastes. Not a chance. He's not like your boss. He doesn't just abandon people to die. What the heck does that mean? Caleb's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Instead, he shot a glare my way. I flinched. As for you, he reached for my wrist, and I instinctively tried to pull it away, even as he clamped some sort of device onto it. What the hell is this? Psi inhibitor. Looks like he doesn't want another building dropped on his head. Still gripping my wrist tightly, Caleb pulled me a little closer. I hope you realize that stunt you pulled nearly got us killed. If Ari had been a second too late. Let go! I didn't even know how I did that, much less did I do it on purpose. I'm not sure I believe you. If you don't want me to knock a building on you, then maybe don't kidnap me. I mean, it's fair. I slammed my free hand into his shoulder. He scowled at me, but I was tired and scared, and the stupid man was on the top of my list of people I was mad at. I'd already decided to go with them, even though I didn't like him. Why was he being a jerk? He grabbed my arm, pinning both my wrists to the table in front of me. Will you be quiet? I struggled to free myself. Let me go! I was vaguely aware of Jack sort of laughing under his breath, and I shot him a glare, suddenly wanting to hit him too. He attempted to not look amused. He failed. I glared at him, tears stinging my eyes because everything hurt and I was so tired of all this. Don't start that crying nonsense. Then don't kidnap me! The tears spilled over, and I wasn't sure if it was because he'd said not to, or if it was because the energy had to go somewhere. And since I couldn't strangle anyone, I was going to cry. Caleb, I may have warped the space around this table, but it would be better if you made some attempt to not create a disturbance. I let out a frantic squeak as Ari appeared out of thin air. I mean, I knew he could do that, but that didn't mean it prepared me for him popping in and out of nothingness. I'm not the one shouting. I knew you'd be lurking around somewhere, Styx. That gave me a pause. Not because it was a weird nickname, but also because it was a nickname at all. I got this feeling before, but do you the three of you know each other? I'm afraid so, Butterfly. Ari looked down at me, taking in what I assumed was my rather woeful appearance. He shot Caleb a disparaging look. You made her cry. Don't give me that, and stop acting like you're not involved. I, at least, have done nothing but help her out today. If you hadn't been skulking around, we wouldn't had to take such drastic measures in the first place. If I hadn't been skulking around, you wouldn't have even known about her. I shot him a poisoned look when he said that. So this is all your fault? You somehow neglected to tell me that earlier. If they had known about me because of him, did that mean everyone else had found me because of him? Hey now, I told you, I'm just trying to help you. Too bad that's a lie. Oh, when the two of you are out here out of the kindness of your hearts. We don't have time for this. She's coming with us, Jack, and you can go back to your boss or go to hell. Your pick. And if I have no intention of letting you take her, you really think you can do anything about it? Will you stop talking about me like I'm an object? I decide where I go and who I go there with. My voice rose to a shout and the window next to me rattled in the pain. I apologize for breaking into this discussion, but word from the tower is that several others are closing in on this location. Yes, Rev, facial hair is very clearly illegal in this world. There has not been a single character with facial hair. They believe at least one of them is from Nyx. Others are unknown affiliation, but that may be the woman from before. Nyx? How many groups of psychos are after me right now? Far too many for you to be safe with anyone but us. I couldn't deny that seemed like it was the case. Well, looks like you made up your mind. I shot him an apologetic look. Haha, don't look at me like that, Butterfly. You have to do what's best for yourself. But unfortunately, so do I. What? The three of them all moved at the same time, and all I caught was a blur of movement as Caleb tackled Jack and Ari yanked me out of my seat toward him. A weapon went off, and the back of my chair exploded. Gee, okay. I crashed into Ari, who pulled me into an awkward, tangled semi-embrace. What had just happened? Did he just try to kill her? What? It took me a moment to realize Jack had been the one to fire a weapon at me. Oh my goodness. What? We're going. Yeah. I wasn't sure why I felt so betrayed, but I didn't have time to think about it. The world twisted, and we left the fighting behind, staggering out into an alley that probably wasn't too far away. I staggered away from him, still not quite used to that. I apologize. I know you wish to choose who to align with. That isn't a choice we can afford to give you. I'd already decided when I realized the two of you would find us. You may be kidnappers, but at least the two of you never tried to harm me. Like, geez Louise! I do not believe Jack shot at you by choice. He was likely under orders to... Are you defending him? Are you people enemies? Things are not always as simple as enemies and allies. Yeah, well, say that again after he tries to shoot you. There is no way Jack believed he would hit you with Caleb and I standing right there. I don't get you people at all. No. Jack was the one who, with the fountain attack, tried to, like, swoop in and save her, apparently, and was the one who was with the court, who was supposed to be the cult. Unknown man. I hate to interrupt the two of you, but we've been waiting an awful long time and would like to just get this over with. Ari and I whirled around to find several people in suits just behind us, all with weapons drawn. How are they finding us? Endgame isn't the only one with competent bishops. Precognition. They must have someone with a foresight ability. So they just knew where we'd be and when? How do you fight against something like that? It is a troubling ability. But like you indicated, Mr. Suit, Endgame has bishops of its own. This time, it was a woman who stepped around the corner behind the suit. She had a smirk on her face and was wearing a white and black uniform. The man who kept his gun on us while the other two trained their weapons on her. Vanessa, your timing is impeccable as usual. I try. What are you lads going to do? If you stay and fight, I assure you that you'll lose. But I'm feeling pretty generous, so if you run, we won't stop you. I'd pick my fights wisely. If your bishop wasn't aware our would be here, you may wish to consider that we're more prepared for this standoff than you are. For instance, the snipers. That set off a mild panic among the suits as one craned his neck trying to spot where anyone else might be hiding. The one man just stared at us, looking like he might try to stand his ground. But a second later, there was a painful flash, and they were gone. They ran away. Is that not what you wanted? Well, it is. Sort of. She came toward the two of us, looking us up and down. Anyway, you two look terrible. It's been a long day. For you, not over. Get back to Caleb and let him get him out of there. We'll get this one back to the tower. Jack? Leave him. Merlin's orders. And Ari, at this point, everyone knows we have the Queen. No need for secrecy. I understand. Merlin? Ari vanished, leaving me with the woman he called Vanessa. He's the boss, and you look like you're about to pass out. I swayed just as she said that, but she sidled alongside me to offer support. So these people really were from Endgame. Is it over? It felt like every ounce of energy was just flowing away from me. I don't know if it was because it felt like I would finally be safe, or if she was doing something to me. Well, might be more accurate to say everything is just getting started. But just get some sleep for now, and when you wake up, I promise things will be better than this. And with that, everything went black. Endgame interlude. Oh my goodness. I was aware of voices before I fully awakened. Two of them, male and speaking in low voices that were a mere buzz. My head throbbed as I tried to work up enough saliva to swallow. Everything was hot. It felt like I was dying. But I couldn't die. I forced my eyes open and through the haze saw two people leaning over me, neither one with facial hair. A broken, distorted series of images flashed through my mind. The car, the explosion, gunshots, a strange man with odd eyes. It wasn't a dream. The realization hit me, and I let out an undignified shriek as I bolted upright. Where was I? I didn't know these people. In the back of my mind, I did think one was vaguely familiar, but the most prominent was the feeling of terror. I acted on instinct. The men jumped back, but I was already launching myself up and off the bed. I saw a blurry head of blonde hair try to duck away, but not before my elbow connected with it. Magnus! He and I hit the ground at the same time, but I didn't stop. The other man came around the end of the bed, but I scrambled away. Have to get home. I burst through the door into the hall, my bare feet slapping against the tiled floor. Everything hurt, but I still ran. The people in the hall were blurs and colored blobs as I sprinted past. A few of them reached for me, but I shouted and staggered away from them. One was a blonde doctor who was just seconds too late to grab me. Where was I going? I didn't know. Outside, I hoped. I rounded a corner, almost toppling as I tried to make the sharp turn. My fingers brushed the floor as I steadied myself and continued to flee. Behind me, people were following. I ran past rows of chairs, stopping to pull some out and into the path. Why couldn't I find an exit? My head hurt so much. Spots swam in and out of my vision. Every memory and thought felt disconnected, discordant. There was only the vision of fractured rainbow light and the sound of everything crumbling around me. I bolted past door after door until I thought I would vomit. It was a maze with no way out. I turned down another corridor, confronted with a blurry dead end ahead. The voices behind me drew closer as I veered into a room on my right and slammed my head onto a control panel to shut the door before shoving a bed across it. I made sure it was wedged against the inner lip so the door couldn't slide open easily. No windows, no way out. I backed against the far wall, leaving it to lean against as I stared at the now blocked exit. Where had they taken me? Who had taken me? Someone tried to open the door. The bed made a horrific scrape as they pushed it back slightly. I grabbed a glass jar with swabs from a nearby counter and hurled it at the door. It shattered and whoever was trying to come inside jerked the door back shut. Voices spoke right outside, one angry and one amused. I gripped my skull and slid down this wall with a soft moan. The voices argued and I let my head drop against my knees. I remembered the rainbow room, the woman shouting at us, a man with strange eyes, but not much more. How long had I been unconscious? And where was I now? Someone tried to open the door again and I struggled to my feet to respond with another glass jar. Stay away! There was a moment of silence. The door opened a few centimeters. We're not going to hurt you. I said stay away! I readied another glass jar just in case. Out of curiosity, what will you do once you run out of jars? I responded by throwing the one in my hand. The door slammed shut, but this time I heard laughter. Ugh. I hit the floor again, straining to hear what was being said outside, the roar of blood in my ears. I was so hot, dizzy. My heart felt like it was about to explode. What should I do now? So how long do you think this standoff will last? The man with the amused-sounding voice. She shouldn't be out of bed, awake or not, much less tearing through the halls screaming and throwing things. It's a wonder she can even move. At the last check, she was still running a high fever, and her blood pressure was very nearly at the top of the hypertensive crisis. That was a different voice, one I hadn't heard before. What were you fools doing that she slipped past you anyway? Well, she woke up pretty damn suddenly. We weren't expecting her to bolt up and knock one of us out. She broke my glasses, too. Now there were at least 3 people. The grumpy voice, the amused voice, and someone else. You imbeciles. We need to get her out of there. At the moment, she seems intent on throwing something at anyone who opens the door. Am I supposed to believe that's enough to stop you lot of monsters? A 4th voice broke in there. If we startle her too much, she may... I couldn't keep up anymore. I shut my eyes, though it didn't stop the feeling of everything spinning like crazy. The voices faded to a dull murmur. After some time, I had a vague awareness of the door opening again. I scowled and jerked my head up. The movement sent my vision reeling, and I had to brace myself against the nearby cabinet to stay upright. Bye, Rev. The figure silhouetted in the door. They were familiar. It was... So, we have the grumpy kidnapper, the tall kidnapper, that blonde guy from before, and the doctor from... Yes, that was a meow. I have cats running around in the background being a little bit nuts right now. So, I am going to say the tall kidnapper. Alright. This choice will unlock Ari's route. Do you want to proceed? Ari seems like he's been a pretty decent fellow to interact with so far. So we'll go with Ari's route. For a long moment, the man just stood in the doorway. I couldn't see his expression clearly, but I knew him anyway. Oops. Knew him anyway. The tall kidnapper. His name was Ari. I spoke first. Where am I? You're at Solaris. Do you not remember? My voice trailed off as a memory surfaced, or tried to. I sort of recalled being in an alley with him and a woman in a white uniform. I don't know. My head's a mess. Hurts. It's hard to think. He stood there a moment longer before he came across the room towards me. I wanted to get away, but didn't have the energy. Everything hurt. The world spun around me, or maybe I was spinning. When Ari reached for me, I flinched, but he simply placed a cool hand against my scorching forehead. The doctor said you have a fever. I'm hardly a physician, but your face is very warm. In a daze, I caught his hand and pressed his cold fingers to my cheek. Feels good. Strangely, he let me do it. Morgan, will you return to your room with me so they can continue your treatment? Your psi fatigue appears to be severe, and you've only exacerbated it by trying to flee. I shook my head, regretting the movement when it sent spikes of pain and dizziness through me. Ari moved a little closer, steadying me as I swayed. I just leaned against him for the time being, wishing the room would stop spinning. I don't want to. I want to go home. Is that why you fled? I don't know. Didn't remember where I was. Woke up with people over me. I panicked. I understand. And I regret to inform you that you'll be unable to go home for the time being. In addition to your medical condition, which is quite poor, it is also unsafe. His voice started to fade into a buzz, but I tried to keep focused. He was saying I couldn't go home. I already knew that. I squeezed my eyes shut. You'll be well cared for here. No one will harm you. Will you stay with me? I didn't know why I asked that. If you wish that. I don't want to be alone. I'll stay with you if you return to your room. I nodded and made a muffled noise of agreement. Everything hurt. I wanted to sleep, but I didn't want to wake up surrounded by strangers again. Ari picked me up effortlessly, and I settled against him, hot, dizzy, and feeling awful. When I stepped in the hallway, several people were waiting. A man I assumed was the doctor and some others. I thought one was the blonde I hit in the head. He was a blurry, white and yellow blob, but I could hear the smile as he fell into step beside us. The lady killer strikes again. I knew sending you was a good idea. Please lower your voice. She appears to be in significant pain. Of course she's in pain. She's lucky it's only pain and that she isn't off in a lonely corner somewhere dying. Doctor, perhaps you could lower your voice as well. In addition, I doubt scaring her will be of any help in this situation. Ari, yes? Do you really kill women? I felt the gentle rise and fall of his chest as he sighed. Go to sleep, Morgan. So I did. I didn't even remember the walk back, much less being returned to my room or anything that happened after. And with that, I think it is time to go and call it a day. Thank you so much for going and tuning in to watching me do a playthrough of Gilded Shadows. It's been great to go and have your company here with me today. I'm planning on continuing on playing this through next week around the same time. So if you'd like to join me around then, that would be completely lovely. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Have a good one.